Hello and welcome back, everyone, to this presentation with ContextVision. My name is Eric Castle, MedTech analyst here at ABG. Very happy to have Gerald, the CEO, with us today, and also Marcus, the CFO, here in the audience. He will join us to answer questions later on. But I'll leave it to you straight away and come back later for the Q&A.
Thank you, Eric, and welcome everybody to ContextVision. Welcome everybody here in the room, and also welcome everybody on the live stream. It's a pleasure to introduce the company today, and I hope we also have a few minutes left for Q&A, so we can discuss a bit about the future evaluation of our company. As Eric said, I'm Gerald. I had ContextVision as a CEO since August this year. I've spent my entire career in the imaging or medical imaging business, lately with a large global OEM, and I've been in different roles in diagnostic imaging, in interventional imaging, X-ray, ultrasound, medical IT. So essentially, I'm staying in the same business, just changing to the supplier side, which is an interesting insight that will drive ContextVision, I think, aggressively forward, but we'll talk about that a bit later. And to my left, we have Marcus Zuckerberg, who is our CFO, a little longer, and we plan to share the presentation or do the Q&As together. So without further ado, I hope this presentation runs. So ContextVision, for those of you who are familiar with the medical imaging industry, you probably recognize all the big names like the Siemens, GE, Canon, Samsungs of the world. But you probably haven't seen or come across ContextVision, and there you're in a good companionship. We're typically white labeled as a supplier to the big OEMs. We're built into their image processing chain, like an Intel Inside, but we don't have the sticker on the system. Our right of existence, or let's say our mission, is to help those bigger OEMs differentiate in image quality. And we do that by providing superior image quality, but also allowing them to create a distinct and characteristic image style. So even if all the components in an imaging system would all be the same, the image that a radiologist would be seeing, or the person who is using the system, would familiarize themselves with a certain style and say, this is what I want to have also in my next generation, right? So it creates stickiness for our customers. And that's what we do with our software in image analysis and image enhancement. And you see we do that mainly for ultrasound, X-ray systems, and magnetic resonance systems. A few figures. For a software company in medical imaging, 40 years is a lot, right? That's the early days of IT. So 1983, the company was founded in Linköping in Sweden, and we did image processing with our own computers, which you can still find in the Linköping Museum nowadays. So we welded hard boards and circuits because the systems itself were too slow for the processing power that was needed. We then went over to PC-based processing, and nowadays everything is either GPU, so graphic cards, or central processing unit-based inside the standard hardware of a system, which changed a little bit the requirements for us to make sure it's backwards compatible with all the system upgrades, etc. But that can be done quite nicely. We have around 400,000 installations live globally, and we consistently invest and continuously invest into R&D. I mean, that's our core. That's why we keep our R&D office in Linköping, where we have good access also to university and world-leading developers, both IT-wise as well as image processing-wise. And if you look to the installed base, and I can't disclose all the customers, that's mainly under NDA, but 70% around our license sales today is ultrasound, 30% is X-ray and MRI. So if you look to the huge number of installed systems and the continuous investments in R&D, I think it's fair to say that over the years we have created a standard in image quality. So what, let's say, tier 2 and tier 3 customers want to accomplish if they start building their own ultrasound system is to get to that image quality standard that we have building over the years. So you can imagine that we're working with almost all big players in the industry over the years. So it's an interesting network play once you have passed the threshold of a good market or fair market penetration. At least that's what attracted me into this business when I made the move from the OEM. Before we go into the company details, I need to bore you with a bit of technology insights, because I think that helps explain a lot around our license model and also on the uniqueness of our business position, not so much the technology. So this is a standard, and I don't think you see the contrast, but this is sort of the value chain in image processing. On the left, you have a detector, and that creates an electrical signal. It's all digital nowadays, and out comes a raw image. That could be a B-mode image in ultrasound, or after image formation in X-ray or MR. And then there happens a lot of processing before you get to a diagnostic image. And that diagnostic image then leaves the medical equipment, so the ultrasound, MR, X-ray system, and goes into what is called PACS, so picture archiving and storage systems. And that's where there's a huge market of AI companies in the post-processing or post-PACS world. Super busy. So they all want to correlate an image with a clinical finding and help increasing efficiency to the benefit of the patient and the physicians. But we're a step earlier, right? We're hard-coded, built into real-time image processing inside an OEM system, which has a huge benefit in having access to the raw data stream. So you can imagine in real-time processing, there happens a lot of compression, data reduction. We reduce noise, we enhance contrast, we sharpen edges, we increase tissue differentiation. That's what we mean by creating a standard. But then everybody in the industry who starts working on our image needs to live with the reduced data density, if I call it that way, of what has been created. So if you look into the future opportunities, the earlier to the source you are, the richer the information is. So I think it's a fantastic position to be in from a value stream perspective. And essentially, we don't see competitors in our market. So the biggest competitor we have is internal R&D. So a big OEM who doesn't want to pollute their IP and decides to hire people and do it on their own. But again, in a penetration and network play, the insight you have across the market is important and cannot be replaced by somebody who's just building up their own let's say, team for one image style and one system and one transducer style. So there's a lot of knowledge, I think, that comes along with our business model and the team. But the second interesting insight on this tech image is the regulatory perspective. So you know, medical device is a very regulated business. So this entire box here that you see is the OEM system that gets approved by the authorities. Right, so 510K typically by the FDA in the US. So in that sense, we are not a medical device manufacturer. We do not get, or we don't need to validate and verify our software, but we're providing it as a software supply into the entire OEM system, which is then getting certified, which has the huge benefit that our customers don't run the risk that we would lose a certification, or they would run two certification processes in parallel, right? So we're plugged into their system, and then the entire system gets certified, which is, from our perspective, again, a huge opportunity in stickiness, right? So if you're included in the system from a regulatory perspective, it is a very sticky delivery. So the other topic I want to mention here is that you can have objective measurements on image quality, right? Noise levels, contrast, etc. But then there is a huge part of subjective style creation, right? So how do I differentiate to my competitor who might have the same objective measurements? And that's what we call tunability according to preferences. That's what our implementation and application engineers are doing in the projects to create a certain style. So all three here are good images from a clinical perspective, but it's a different taste, whether you want to have more sharper, higher contrast, or you want to have a more noisy image, like Asian countries would prefer this, and European and US styles might be more on this axis. And that style gets hard-coded into our software, which is then implemented on every system that leaves the factory. So we get paid for every unit manufactured, so every unit ultrasound, MR, X-ray that is leaving an OEM factory will have our license for the combination of the parameter files and our core engine, and that creates a good perpetual license revenue. So I hope that was helpful in understanding our business model. Now, there's a lot of discussion around AI in the market, right? Everything is going to change now with machine learning and deep learning, and we're basically running algorithms on our image enhancement. 40 years ago, nobody talked about machine learning, so it was humans and statistics that created the algorithms. But what we can see today, and that's how we are using and embracing the power of machine learning, is to make our algorithms more powerful, right? So we can use more complex models and run more complex models, still staying cutting edge on the processing power of an imaging system. So we combine, let's say, the robustness of a man-made algorithm, real-time processing, with the power of AI in terms of better enhancing the diagnostic image. A second opportunity of using machine learning in our business is to do these tuning exercises, which our engineers are doing very professionally, but takes a while to automate that, right? So we can use deep learning to standardize human perception. What are different styles, right? Not every radiologist means it is a style, but you can understand commonalities. And in that sense, we could help our OEMs better address their target groups. And it could be, let's say, tunable looks, but it could also be auto-tunable to different anatomies. So it could make scanning significantly easier, and you don't have to do all the buttonology on the systems, but machines can improve efficiency. And that's a big topic now, especially through the pandemic. Everybody learned that throughput and efficient use of staff is much more important than just the diagnostic quality itself. So that's a huge driver for us in the market. But again, the secret from our perspective is a smart combination of machine learning and algorithm-based processing, and not an approach where AI takes over everything. Just two images. Here is sort of the technical performance, right? And this is a beer, by the way. It's not a dog. Unprocessed and processed with our Altomira. You see on the left-hand side, it's difficult to read. On the right-hand side, you can better see the anatomy. And here again is an example more of the styles, right? Unprocessed to the left, but then all the right images are good. But it's a question and matter of taste, which one you prefer. And this beamer doesn't really show, I think, the resolutions that you would need to be able to judge, really. So if you want, can buy our office just 2 blocks down the road. We'll have clinical screens, and you can better look at it. So we felt we should also talk a little bit about the company performance and journey. And Marcus, I would love to hand over to you to talk a bit about that topic, and then we can back together take Q&A.
Thank you, Gerald. So, as Gerald said, we have a long history, turning 40 next year. And during that period, we have been a very stable, long-term growth cash machine, I would say. The growth is, on this picture, for the last 6 years, 5 years, is about 6.6% CAGR, compounded annual growth rate. And we said that 40% of our employees are within R&D. And we are trying to be in the forefront of image enhancement all the time. And the way that we do this is to continuously utilize the power of the R&D staff that we have, and to make those ideas and research and product development into marketable products, and continuously release those to the market. When it comes to the share price development over the years, as you know, we've invested quite heavily in a product that's now a company called Inify Laboratories, and that was a long time ago, a couple of years ago, when we first discovered digital pathology, and grow that from a simple idea to a product to a business, a full-grown business. And they are currently setting up their lab here in Stockholm and running the first operation or analysis. But during this time, the share price took a leap up, I would say. And in the beginning of this year, we paid out the dividend in ContextVision's history. For the first time, I think, in the ContextVision's history. We paid out the company Inify Laboratories to the shareholders. So that was a dividend worth about 30 million SEK. And now we have Gerald, new CEO, in place, and the share price looks like it's just waiting for something to happen, something to look forward here. Thank you. Gerald?
So we see this really as an example, Marcus, thanks for putting up the slide here, that we are very experienced in using AI, right? So the digital pathology business was an AI application for microscopy to help pathologists run the diagnosis. So we know how this works, but it ended up in a different business model and different regulatory environment as a lab. So see it as a proof point that we have in-house the capability to use AI in the way that I showed you earlier. And I think the one biggest opportunity in our market now is to focus on handheld ultrasound. So that's a market that has been projected to take off rapidly, but it has been holding flat, not flat, but a middle single-digit growth. Let me put it that way. But it expected to add, 100,000 units going to be shipped. And the biggest benefit is here that you have a vastly different addressable market, because it's not a radiologist or a trained sonographer that is going to use those equipments, but it can be any nurse, right? It can be pregnancy control in Africa by unskilled professionals. It can be screening. It can be early diagnosis. It's an unharmful technology, but we need to support OEMs to make it easier, more efficiently to use, so we can use AI to help automate screening, selecting protocols. And frankly, the biggest challenge so far was that for the price point, the image quality was also low, but it was so low that it wasn't useful for significantly relevant diagnosis. But if you enhance the image quality to get to a level where you can certainly now start replacing mid-tier card-based systems, and you run reasonable diagnosis and do that in a much broader way, I think then both OEMs and for us, it's going to be a very successful journey together. Our usual standard lead time for projects is somewhere between 2 to 3 years, right? So our implementation maybe takes 2 to 3 months, but you have the evaluation phase up front, and then there is typically a 6 to 9 months freeze phase of releases for the OEMs before they start selling the systems. And we have launched our product, it was on Marco's slide earlier this year. So we've transferred all our knowledge and processing power to be able to run on iOS, Windows, Android. So it's released as a commercial product. But until it hits the market and we follow sort of the release timelines of the OEMs, usually you can expect another 2 years to pass by, right? But the market, you see, is going to grow by 45% by 2026. So as we are paid by the unit being shipped, it's a very interesting opportunity for us in terms of the current business, and it's even more interesting to help automate and improve the diagnosis in the future. So once we And the strategy is to get a good foot into a broad market penetration with the current versions that we have, and that allows us to address future releases into an installed base, which is significantly easier than initial sales. So brief summary before we go to Q&A, and I hope I didn't forget to mention the different points. I'll not talk you through it, but for the ones on the screen, or if the presentation is distributed later on, you can find a nice summary of who we are. We didn't talk maybe about profitability. I think we're a very profitable company from an investment perspective, 44% EBIT last year. We found now a good new baseline after the spin-off of Inify. You see that in the quarterly reports. It's going to be a similar ballpark, I would say. A market cap in our perspective, as Markus mentioned, we should have a discussion around. I think there is quite some room to grow if you see the opportunities that we're having with the capabilities and the strategy on really focusing on the core now, right? We've done a lot of investments in this digital pathology, and that has defocused a bit, and maybe the future story was too much around that business, whereas we underestimate the enormous opportunity in the core business. The other topics I also mentioned, we have an average market growth 4.5% versus our growth of 6.6%. I think we can grow and are entitled to grow substantially stronger than the market. For next year, we see a roughly 3% growth of the addressable market, so it's slightly lower, but it really doesn't matter so much if you look to the potential we have moving forward. So I would stop here and rather open up for questions and then be focused on answering them. But also feel free to reach out to us if we don't address all the questions after the meeting, or sending me or Markus an email. Eric.
Very good. Thank you very much. So I guess elephant in the room, you mentioned that OEMs are, your competition is really in-house R&D from them. There's really 3 big ones that shares the market. What are the risks really of them developing competitive products to yours?
Yeah, so let me address this straight away. It is maybe 3 brands, but having worked on an OEM side before, sometimes on purpose, you have different teams with different sourcing strategies and different partners within that one big OEM. So the one big OEM might have an X-ray business, an ultrasound business, and our business. Within ultrasound, they may have different platforms. They may have handheld, low tier, mid tier, high end. Each of them might be a different factory and a different R&D team. So if we say we're working with all OEMs out in the world, doesn't mean we're on all platforms, right? So there is still room to grow. But usually it's impressive when we come in, let's say, on the mid-tier, and we show that we can get a mid-tier image quality to a high-tier look and feel. Then we create our own demand. Then we also need to lift the performance of the premium, right? And it could be vice versa, that you want to reduce the spread. So I think to answer your question, competition is not just on the high-level sourcing for one OEM, but it's really the hands-on image quality development teams, and that's different in every unit. And for us, it means there's still room to grow. If we would be able to disclose what platforms we are on, then you could estimate much better how much we're still able to grow. Okay. Addressing more platforms.
I understand. So many customers under 3 umbrellas, basically.
Yes.
But then if we think about customer concentration, is there any particular customer that represents a huge part of the business?
Yeah, so let me answer this way. Historically, the strategy, and I think that was good, was to start with tier 1 customers. Don't take the easy ones that are so bad in image quality that just need something urgently to be accepted in the market. We on purpose addressed tier 1 customers to develop together and learn, right? And then sort of learn also how to better differentiate and then address other tier 1s, but also provide opportunities for tier 2 and 3. And I mean, that's we get those questions also from OEMs. If we work with you, we share our knowledge, and you're going to, you know, provide that to the rest of the market. But you know the paradigm of market of lemons, right? The more transparency, the more broader penetration you have, the better it is for the entire market, right? And that's what's happening here also. It creates demand for us to perform even better for other tier ones, right? And you can't overcome bad components that are also included in the imaging chain. So we haven't seen that really as an issue or as a conflict, right? We're also not losing customers. I'm not aware of any big loss, or let's say from a tier one level, where the value proposition has gone wrong.
And coming back to how you make money with the licenses, I mean, you said that there's chips with basically every system that's out there, but there's no optionality for end customers to say that they want this. It's just basically everyone who orders one of these MRIs or X-rays, they get your product.
So we can certainly do better from a marketing perspective and from a segmentation and configuration perspective. But let me say what we do today. So we're offering implementation and customization services. So that's engineering hours that are billable. We are offering perpetual licenses once the software is embedded, and we offer service contracts for updates, upgrades, and regular maintenance. So there are different revenue streams that are coming in. In terms of configuration, you have to customize the licenses for every combination of a detector or transducer and an imaging platform and a clinical application. So you can build your matrix on clinical application, number of detectors and platforms, which are specific licenses, right? And then we license, it depends on really the license agreement, whether we cover all clinical areas, whether it's tied to one transducer, and that also explains different pricing models behind the licenses. So it looks like there's one toolbox for everything, but if you scratch under the surface, there is a huge opportunity to customize and have a pretty broad range also of leveraging the different value benefits across the platforms.
And for this handheld device, is that the same price point for that license as there is for basically every other machine? Because you mentioned, the price of an MRI, for example, that's way different than the handheld.
Yes, so it's an entirely different product, right? We also had to make sure that it works on the different platforms. It's a very different maintenance model. You need to make sure it is updated according to every iOS or system release, if you want. It is built, and the business case on building it was on a volume market. So we have anticipated the current volumes out on the market, but we would extremely benefit if the market would really take off. So it's a different pricing position, but I think, or I hope, and I guess we've done the right choices on positioning it.
And now, if you look at this market and your potential growth for you, if we look at the base diagnostics market, I think that grows 4 or 5% maybe in units over time. And then you potentially, I saw that you developed and launched a bunch of products. Are you able to raise prices on top of that by adding more features and that stuff to sort of grow above that? 45%?
Yeah, I mean, the medical market, right? So it's a constant pressure on. There's no more money from the governments into the system. So the whole imaging market is a price squeeze market, an efficiency gain market. So everybody asks for volume discounts over a year. The more license you sell, the more you should decrease your price points. The only way you can overcome is come up with new functionality, new features that deliver additional benefit. And that's what Marcus showed over the years. We constantly have to release new products. And typically lifetime of a platform implementation, maybe around, in ultrasound, 5 years, and in the other imaging modalities, it's a little longer. And that basically dictates the release cycles if you want to manage price increases. Right now we have a little different situation on the inflation, so that's certainly also a driver. But in general, in the market, you see that the market needs to eat up a lot of the efficiency gains. So salary index is going higher than the medical equipment price index, and that squeeze the industry has to take up, and we're sort of in that boat together with the OEMs. But I think we managed significantly better if you look into our EBIT performance, at least compared to some of the OEMs itself.
And I've heard some estimates that you have about 90% market share in your relevant niche. Is there any potential to expand that addressable market so that you could, grow above market rates going forward?
Yeah, I mean, there's huge opportunities. We're just limited right now in number of people, but we're having a quite a strong growth strategy, and we're going to do investments next year also in addressing those opportunities. So there's different modalities you could think of, right? Typically, we're very good in low quality images, and there are other modalities out in the market that are significantly more expensive, but that are not yet looked at. But there is, just to mention one thing, not saying we're doing it, but to give you an example, is for instance the nuclear medicine market, right, where there's shortage of supply in FTG, so radioactively sugar that you use, and you want to work with lower activity, and then you need to live with lower quality images, but you still want to have a diagnostic image to provide service to patients, right? So there's a huge market now opening up for us with the supply challenges, logistic challenges, staff challenges. So that's one thing. The other thing is really looking into efficiency, using more machine learning in supporting other elements on the image processing chain for our customers. So yes, I mean we're not tied, let's say, to image analysis and enhancement as we do it today. So we could also think left and right, and we could think about expanding to different use cases. We also do by the way, veterinary market, which is also growing stronger than we had initially anticipated.
Okay, thank you, Ariel. So time flies when we're having fun, and it seems like we're over time already. So thank you very much for joining us here. Very interesting to listen to.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, everyone.